Selection or conditional flowchart and pseudocode. For the selection or conditional flowchart, these are the symbols we're going to make use of. The terminal symbol, again for the start and the end of the flowchart. The input and output symbol, the preparation symbol, but it is optional. Preparation symbol is used if you want to assign variables with already a constant, like for example, pi. Pi contains a value of 3.16, so you make use of a preparation symbol to initialize already the variable with 3.16. Direction flow lines, and an additional two flowchart symbols, we're going to make use of the decision symbol. This shape is represented as a diamond, and this object is always used in a process flow to ask a question. And the answer to the question determines the arrows coming out of the diamond, whether it is true or false. For the pseudocode, we're going to still use the accept and display for the input and output of the values or the variables. In addition to that, since this is already a decision making and this is already a selection or conditional program structure for flowchart and pseudocode, we're going to make use of the if then else syntax. So there are two types of syntax for if then else. Syntax number one is what we call the two-way if then else, and the syntax number two is the multiple or multi-way if then else. For syntax number one, if your condition is true, then it will execute the first statement. Otherwise, it will execute the else portion of the statement. When you see begin and end, it means begin and end syntax for a statement is used if you have more than one statements to be executed within the condition. For syntax number two, if you have multiple options, you may use this kind of syntax. If condition number one is true, then the first statement should be executed, then the rest of the conditions will be omitted. But if condition number one is false, it will proceed and jump to the second condition and test the second condition. If the second condition is true, then it will execute the second statement. The rest of the other condition below will be omitted or disregarded. Else, if condition n is true, then it will execute the statement n, and then else will be disregarded or omitted. But if all conditions are false, it will fall on the else statement. Let's have the first example. We're going to create a flowchart and a pseudocode that would input an integer number and then indicate whether the number is an even or an odd number. So now, let's put it in the flowchart design. So we're going to make use of the dosage, start. Then next is, we're going to input our num. Then, right after that, okay, we're going to make use of the process. And then we're going to compute for the remainder. So this is num modulo 2. The next is, we're going to make use of the decision symbol. If rem is equals to 0, then might be this one is true, this one is false. Okay? So if it's true, that means I'm going to output even. And if it's false, let me just use a connector. So since this is on the same page, I'm going to make use of the on-page connector and put a label on it, A. Then I'm going to use the connector here, A, then direction flow lines, just to put the output here. So if that is false, output odd. Then after that, end. Now, on this portion, there is a dangling symbol. So we need to connect this after outputting that the value is even, we need also to end it. So in this case, since this is the continuation of the flowchart, I need to connect it again with a connector. So let me use B. Since A is used for the false statement, so I'm going to use B to end the flowchart for displaying even. So I'm going to connect the B in this portion. Okay, so let's simulate. So let's say, for example, I input 5. Then you test. Rem is equals to num modulo 2. We process the number. So the remainder here will be 1. 5 modulo 2 is equals to 1. Then if 1 is equals to 0, then false. So we'll proceed to connector A. On page connector A is this one, and it will display odd and then end. Okay? But what if my value of num is 50? So 50 modulo 2 is 0. So if 0 is equals to 0, true. Then it will output even. Then connector B is after output add, since we're going to end only the flowchart. For the pseudocode, we're going to start it with variables used. So variables used are num and rem are numeric. Then we have begin. So after begin, we input the value of num. So that's accept num. Then after accepting the value of num or inputting the value of num, we process the rem, which is rem is equals to num modulo 2. Then we use the diamond shape symbol. So for that case, we're going to make use of the if then else for the pseudocode. So if condition will be rem is equals to 0, let's put a parenthesis. Then we're going to display the value is even. Else, we're going to display odd. And then we have end. So again, let's simulate. So let's say, for example, I input the value of 5. Then we're going to process 5 modulo 2. That's actually 1. If 1 is equals to 0, so that's false. So it will fall into the else statement. And the else statement is displaying that the value is an odd number. Now, if, and then end. If the input number is 50, so that means that 50 modulo 2 will be 0. So if 0 is equals to 0, that's true, then it will execute the statement below that particular condition. Then it will display even. So it will omit the else portion and continue to end. Another solution in getting the value, whether it is odd and even, is I'm going to omit the variable rem. Okay? So in this case, let me again create a flowchart design for that. So I'm going to have start. Then I'm going to ask the user to input the value for num. But in this case, I'm not going to use a process box, but instead I'm going to directly use the diamond shape symbol. Because in the diamond shape symbol, we can actually include all the expressions within the symbol. So the arithmetic, the logical, and the relational, of course, we can actually put it in the decision symbol. So instead of processing the rem in the process box, so I'm going to use if num modulo 2 is equals to 0. So if you're going to take a look at the formula within the decision symbol, it's just the same as rem is equals to 0. So instead of rem is equals to 0, I'm going to use the operation, arithmetic operations modulo division na modulo 2. So again, if this is true, if this is false, so if true, then I'm going to display that the value is even. If it's false, I'm going to display the value which is odd. Okay, then I'm going to put end. So in this case, again, this is a dangling symbol. So I need to connect this one to the end. Okay, so I may use the flow lines, or to make it clear or to make it simple or simpler, I'm going to use again an on-page connector and label it with A. And I'm going to put my label A here before the end of the flowchart. I'm going to denote it here as A. Second solution for the pseudocode, same problem, will be variables used. So in this case, I'm going to use only the num. Num is numeric. Then I have begin. Then I'm going to use accept num. So again, instead of processing rem, I'm going to include num modulo 2 in the if then else statement. If num modulo 2 is equals to 0, then I'm going to display that the value is even. Otherwise, I'm going to use else and then display that the value is odd. And then I'm going to use end. So that's the second solution in getting if the number is even or an odd number.